Hello, this is Anbuff76, and today I would like to look into text dissolve animation. I have posted a while ago, and I refer to the animation where Anbuff76 logo was dissolved and turned into smoke-like thing and then finally disappear. So let's start. Right click on the lamp and then press delete to delete it. We will not need this. Right click on the cube and press tab to go into edit mode, and we are going to scale the cube in edit mode. So press S, 7, enter, and press tab to exit edit mode. The reason we have scaled the cube in edit mode is that we need to have the right proportions of the object when we will be applying the textures to it. If we would scale the cube in normal object mode, then those proportions would be incorrect, and Blender would treat this huge cube as it would be the small one with its original size, and the results will be really inaccurate and really odd. You can play around with this when you will be doing your animation so you can see the differences. Okay, let's move on. Press 1 and 5 on the numpad to go to the front orthographic view. Press Z to go to wireframe mode, and now let's add a text. Press Shift A, select text, and we need, in order to see the text from our perspective, we need to rotate it. So press R, X, 90 and enter. So we have rotated the text for 90 degrees on X axis, and we can see what's written there. And let's replace the default text with something else. Press Tab to go to the edit mode, and let's replace it with whatever you like. I will go for Anpuff76. Press Tab to exit the edit mode, and let's make the text a little bit bigger. So click on this F icon, the object data, the font object data panel, and change the size here from 1 to 1.5 or even 1.75. And it looks good. In case you are not you do, in case you want to use another font, or in case you are not happy with the looking of this one, in a font type you have this icon folder when you can click, and depends on which operating system you are, the fonts folder might be somewhere else. I'm on a Windows, so my fonts folder are under Windows fonts, but I'm not I will just stick to the default one for purpose of this video. Now press G to move the object and hold your control key, so when you will be moving it, it will snap to grid, so it will be possible to position the text more precisely, and move it to the middle of a screen. Press left click to confirm, and now we have to add some depth to the text because right now it's plain. So in a bevel section, in a depth, type 0.07, but it depends on which font type you have and depends on what size the text your text is. This value might be lower or higher, but it's very easy to exaggerate with that and then the text will look really odd and strange. So let's go to the 0.07 and let's add some resolution to that so it will be more smooth. So let's type 10, and this is fine. We are ready to add some particles to that, but since this is a text, we first need to convert it to a mesh before we'll be able to add particle system. So press Alt C and choose Mesh from Curve Meta Serve Text option, and now the text is converted to a mesh. And in case you will see that there is a typo and there is, or you want to type something else, you would have to, right now I can press Alt Control Z to revert it, but at the later stage it's not possible to edit the text which is converted to a mesh, so you would have to delete the text and start again. Okay, since I reverted the change, Alt C again to convert it to a mesh, and let's move to particle section or particle tab. Click this plus sign to add new particle system, and before we'll move on, let's define couple of things. Let's define how long our animation will be, and let's say it will be 450 frames long. We want our logo to be dissolved and disappear before end of the animation. So we need to have the particle emission time shorter than the animation time frame. So let's say that our our emission time will be 300 frames, and the particle lifetime will be set to 125. So, the first particles will be emitted at the frame number 1, the last particles will be emitted at the frame number 300. Those particles will be visible for 125 frames, and then after that they will disappear. So we can add some randomness to that by setting the randomness to 0.15, yeah, 0.15. So some, excuse me, some of the particles will disappear faster than the other ones, and by the frame 425, everything should disappear, and that would be before our animation will end. Now, change the emission from a jitter to random, so the particles will be emitted from the random locations or random places of our mesh, and press Ctrl S to save the file. And in case you haven't saved the file before, then you would have to type a name. I did it before, so I don't have to. Once the file is saved, expand the cache tab and change the cache step down to 1, so the calculations will be done every single frame, which means the end result animation will be better because of the calculations. And since we have saved the file, then the disk cache option is available, so let's select it. And once the disk cache is set on, then all of the calculations will be saved on a drive and they will not be kept in the memory. So we can go for a higher number of particles, as well as the calculation time will be decreased. Now let's excuse me. Now let's tweak some basic settings for our particles. Scroll down to the velocity and change the emission speed from 1 to 0.05. So the particles will be emitted with the very small or slow speed. Scroll down to the field waves and change the gravity down to 0. So the gravity will no longer impact or influence our particles, so they will not fall down. They will be floating in the air, and we can see how it will looks like by pressing Alt A. So make sure that your text is selected so we can see our particles more clearly, and press Alt A, and yeah, they are floating in the air. And yeah, this looks fine. Of course, this is not overwhelming because we have just 1,000 particles, but it's a good overview. And the reason I haven't changed the number to the desired number yet is that I want to play around with force field, and if I would go for high number of particles, it would be quite difficult to set the keyframes for a force field. So now let's leave it as 1000. We will increase that later. Now let's change couple of the other settings. Let's define how the particles will look like. So in the render section, deselect emitter. So this object will not be visible in the render. We will see just particles. And change it from halo to none. We don't want our particles to be halos. Expand display and change the render type to point, so we could see our particles in a 3D view. And I think this is all what we have to tweak here. Now let's add a force field and start some fun. Press Shift A, move to the force field and add the turbulence force field, and a turbulence force field will add some random turbulences to the scene, so our particles will be messed around pretty nicely. And let's move to the make sure that the force field is selected. Let's move to the physics tab, and first of all let's define what we want to achieve here. I would like to have my logo to be visible for around 30 seconds, and after that the force field will rapidly start messing around with my particles. So let's change the strength down to 0. And maybe before I will go further, let me explain very briefly what are the settings for the force field. So shape defines what is the uh, influence of the force field. Point means that the force field will influence in every direction in a space. If it would be plane, then the influence would be set to z-axis. Of course, we want our particles to be influenced in every direction, so we leave the point. The default shape as point. Strength is self-explanatory. It's a strength of the force field. Size defines the size of the turbulences. Noise adds the 3D noise which drives the turbulences, and flow converts some of the force field mm, into force field influence into airflow. Okay, now let's add end of theory. Now let's add a keyframes to the four fields. Make sure that you are on a frame number 1. Move your mouse over the field, press I to insert the keyframe, and let's repeat that on all of the four field. And now let's move to the frame number 29 and insert the keyframes again. So move your mouse over the field, press I. And now let's move to frame 35 and let's add the values. So let's go for strength like 2.25. Let's say the size will be 1, the flow will be 0.25, and the noise will be 2, 0. And we have to insert keyframes once more, so move your mouse over the field, press I to insert the keyframe, and let's see how this looks so far. Press 1 to go to the first frame, right click on our object to better see particles, and press Alt A to play the animation. And it looks fine. It looks messy. And in case you are not satisfied, and I think I am, but in case you're not satisfied with the end result, like it's too messy or it's too low, you would like to have it more more rapid or more dense or more intense, then just go to the last frame where you inserted the keyframes, which is 35 in our case, and change the settings. And in case you change any of the settings, just make sure that you will insert the keyframe for that field, so the changes will be stored. If you would not insert the keyframe, then the changes you will make will be just ignored by Blender. Okay, now I think we can position the camera where we want to observe our scene from. So press 1 to go to the front view again, and in case you're not in the orthographic view, you are in a perspective view, just press 5 on the numpad. Scroll in or move in or move out from the logo, and zoom in or zoom out. This is what I meant. Mm, once you will feel that this is a good position, then in order to place camera at that position, press Ctrl Alt 0, and we can press 0 on the 0 on the numpad to see our logo from the camera perspective. Let's play the animation once more. Let's move to frame number 1. Press Alt, right click on our text, press Alt A. I'm just right clicking on this because then I can see the particles more clearly. Oh yeah, this will be a pretty messy one, and that's fine. I think we need to move camera back, so right click on the camera, press Shift F to go to the fly mode, and zoom out to move camera a little bit back. I think this would be fine. Let's in, let's test it once more, and this time I'm not selecting the object, so you can see it's quite. You can still see the particles, but they are not so clearly visible. One more test before we will bake the animation. Let's move to the particle section, and let's change this default 1000 to something like 25,000. And let's play the animation once more. I think this is fine, but we can do something more. Uh, Instead of leaving the static field, let's move the field a bit, so the result of or let's say the impact or influence from the force field to particles will be more 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 dynamic, so to say. Make sure that you're in the first frame, right click on the force field. Let's move to frame 29. This is where the force field starts to get the values, and press I and insert location rotation scale keyframe. Now let's move to frame 150 and press G to move the object and move the force field on the left upper corner of our text. And the result here, as you can see, is really messy because the Blender haven't been able to calculate up to frame 150. Um, and this is why I went for low values, low number of particles. If I would have some like a 2 millions of particles, then I would have to wait for a couple of seconds before being able to move the force field, or before being able to move between the frames. Okay, let's go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, and let's move the force field behind our text, and let's press R to rotate it, and then rotate it a little bit. And now we are ready to insert the keyframe, so press I, insert location rotation scale keyframe, and let's go to frame 250. Let's move the force field something like here, or even more, in front of our text. Press 1 to go to the front view, and now let's move it below our logo. Press R to rotate it a little bit, and insert keyframe location rotation scale. Now let's move to frame 350. Move the force field above the just a little bit above the logo. Press 7 to go to the top view, and move the force field just a little bit behind our text. Press R to rotate it once more, and insert another keyframe. And finally 450 frame, And let's move this field somewhere like here. We don't have to be precise because at that time the particles would already disappear from our scene. We can rotate it once more, press I to insert another keyframe. Now press 0 to go to the camera view, right click on our text, go to the frame number 1, and let's see how this looks so far. And it looks like more rapid, more dynamic. Looks interesting, and I think we can stay with this. Maybe we can move our camera just a little bit back. So right click on the camera, press Shift F, zoom out a little bit, press G and move it up, and that should be fine. One final test, and that would be the last one. Just make sure that the particles are not getting out of the camera. Fine. They should also not get out of the cube, so we should be fine. Good. Now let's save the file once more. Press Ctrl S with the text selected in the particles tab. Let's go for a desired number of particles. Since I would like to save a little bit time with the baking, I will go for 2 millions of particles. So the baking would take something like 40 minutes, maybe up to 1 hour. Depends on how powerful computer you have. You can go for 4 or 5 millions of particles. I think my animations I posted had something like 3 or 4 millions of particles. The baking time was like 4 to between 3 or and 5 hours. I don't remember, but it was quite long. So I will go for 2 millions of particles. So having said that, of course, the more particles you will have, the better end result will be, but still, with 2 millions of particles, the end result should still be satisfying. 2 millions, enter, and now, once done, let's click the Bake All Dynamics, but before that, let's click Free All Bakes just to make sure that any baking we have done by playing our animation will be wiped out. And now press Bake All Dynamics, and once I will do that, I will stop recording and I will be back once the baking will be done. Okay, the baking is done. It took 45 minutes, I think, and yeah, that's why I went for 2 millions of particles, mainly just to save time. But in case you went for a higher number of particles, then you won't be disappointed. Now let's look how the animation looks like, but unfortunately when I will play the animation, then it will be it won't be easy to watch that. It will be quite painful to watch that, to be honest, because the frame rate would be like half of the frame per second, because I will be playing the animation and recording at the same time. So instead, what I would like to do is I will jump through the couple of keyframes of the animation and we will see how the result looks like. Maybe reposition camera or something like that. So first of all, let's go to frame number 20, and as you can see, our logo is made of particles. It looks like cloud thing, and it looks fine. Let's move to frame number 30. We don't see yet influence of the force field, but when we will move to frame like 40, we should see, yeah, we should start seeing the influence of the force field, which will get higher and higher or bigger and bigger when we will move with the frames. So let's move to, for example, frame number 70. And yeah, the our logo is pretty messed up, but it will be messed up more. Let's go to frame like 150. Here we go. That's a that's a nice mess up of the particles. Let's go to frame 250. And as you can see, we might move the camera just a little bit. And yeah, that should be, maybe we can move that down a little bit. And move to frame 350. And finally, we should expect that the particles will start to disappear by the frame 425. So let's move to the frame 415 or 410. And when I will be moving towards the end of the animation, you can see that they are, maybe let me play that. You can see that they are finally disappearing, and they are gone. Good. So once our baking is done, once we are satisfied with the camera position and so on, you can of course animate the camera like to move or to rotate over the text, but I think 450 frames is too low, too less to rotate the camera. That would be rotating too fast. I will just leave it as it is. The camera will be static. Now press Control S to save the file, and let's start adding lights and textures to our cube. First of all, click on the world and change the horizon color to black. Now press Shift A and add a lamp and let it be area. Move it. Let's press 5 to go to the orthographic view. Let's move it up and let's go to the camera data. Make sure that the camera type, the shadow type will be, sorry, the shadow type will be ray shadow, and we can decrease the size. What we want to do is we want our light to go through the cube. The whole thing we will be doing to achieve our dissolving effect is called volume rendering, and it's a method of rendering light as it passes through certain area in space, mm, which is defined in Blender as volume. So this cube is our volume, and this light will pass through our volume, and the particles will be given a certain texture, which is the point density, and the point density textures will render particles as points. Mm, there will be volume points, and they will be given certain radius. By default, all of those particles will be rendered as small spheres with certain radius, and we can tweak how this will looks like, but I will go to that later. Now let's fix the lights. Let's change the color of the lamp, and I will go for something like, I don't know, copperish. It looks like copperish. Whatever. This orangish color, and let's change the energy to be like 1.5, so the more energy, and I will duplicate this light, and I will uh, position it on the left and on the right side of the cube. So press Shift D to duplicate the lamp, like place it here, rotate it, and we can increase the distance and duplicate it again, Shift D, place it on the right side of the cube, rotate it. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Press 7 on the numpad to go to the top view, and let's just see how it looks like. We can even add one more light, so press 3 to go to the right view, duplicate this one, put it on right behind the text, and rotate it so it will point towards the camera. And I think that's all. It might be even a little bit too much, but we will see that later once we will render the first rendering. Now let's right click on a cube, maybe press 5 on the numpad to go to the orthographic view. Go to the materials tab. Since we have used the default cube, so we have already the default material, in case you use the non-default cube, or in case you don't have material, then you would have to click plus sign to add new material to the cube, and change the type of the material to volume. And we will be interested in 3 settings here: the density, which defines the base density of the material; density scale, which is the multiplier to density, because density can have the values from 0 to 1, so you can use density scale to multiply that to have higher density; and the scattering, which defines what amount of light, or what's the amount of light which is going to be scattered by the volume, or in other words, which will be diffused by the volume. And the lower density will be, then the softened results we will have. The higher density, then it will be much more the higher the density will be, then it will be much more higher for light to pass through. The more scattering we will have, then our result will have more contrast. The less scattering, then it will be softer. And let's leave for now the default settings. One thing more: the step size, which defines the steps between the individual volume points. The lower value, the better quality of end result, but at the same time, the lower value, the higher time of render of the frame. I will go now for let's leave it. I would like to show you a couple of differences between the settings, so let's leave it as default. Now let's move to a texture, and again, in case you since we are using the default material or default cube with default material, we have default texture. In case you don't have textures, then you would need to click the plus sign to add a texture and change the type to a point density. So now you have to select the object which emits the particles and its text, and change the, or let's say select the particle system this volume material needs to take into consideration. And that's all. That's the basic settings. Let's look how it will looks like now. So go to render, select render image. Oh yeah. I haven't done one thing, and I always forget about that, and always find myself in kind of why it's not working. Deselect emission, select density, and change blend to multiply. Otherwise, it will not work. So make sure that the density is selected, nothing else, and the blend type is set to multiply. And now let's try again. And yeah, we have just one particle. Let's move to the frame number 30. We need particles in order to see the effect. One more try. And as you can see, we have more particles than the cache, the pre-caching volume increased, and yeah, um, this is one of the last frames, so this is no longer looking as the logo. Mm, it would looks like the logo when we would be like a frame number 15. So let's review that first. So our particles, no, it doesn't look like the logo. Anyway, I think the reason for that is the size of the radius of the particles. So let's stick to the settings, and then I will tweak it around a little bit. I will tweak it a bit, and we can see the difference between results. But as you can see, the particles are building up the logo. Maybe it's not readable because of the radius size, but yeah, we have the logo visible, and then around frame 30 something, then it will start to be messed around. Let's see how it will looks like with the default settings. Let's go to frame like 50. So we have a default density set to 1. We have the density scale set to, I think it was 0 or 1. No, it had to be 1 because 1 multiplied by 0 gives 0. So we have density scale set to 1, and we have the default scattering set to 1, and the results with the default settings are this. When we will increase the density of the volume material, then the light will have some difficulties to pass through those particles or pass through the volume, and we will see the gray areas where the light will not be able to pass through. With the more scattering, we will see the more contrast, and with the lower step size, we will see better quality of result, and of course the radius of the particles will make this logo more readable. So, having said that, let's go back to the frame number 15. Make sure that the cube is selected. Go to the materials. Change the step size to zero point 0.1 or even to 0.075. Let's not. You can go for lower values, but I would like to make sure that the render will not take minutes. Now let's change the scattering a little bit, sorry, the density a little bit. So let's go for density 2. As I mentioned, this is multiplier, so by the end the density would be 2. In case I would have my density set to 0.5, then by the end I would have density equal to 1. And let's get crazy with scattering. Let's go for 5. We still leave radius as it is. Render, and let's wait for the end result. So like, as you can see, we have some places where the light is not able to get to pass through so easily as in other cases. We have some high contrast and so on, and resolution of screen is, or let's say the resolution of this image is small, but anyway, I think we can you can see the differences. Now let's tweak the radius of the particles, and by default it's set to 0.3. That's why I was a little bit confused when I saw first time my logo. It's like, oh, it's you cannot read that. If we will go for something like 0.05, then we should almost see individual particles. So it would be more readable because the radius is set to low value. The lower it will be, then you would be able to more clearly see the particles. And with the lower radius, the render time will decrease. With the higher values, um, the render time, the calculation and the render time increase, and the effect is smooth to a certain time, and then it starts to be something like too cloudy, so to say. So let's go for other setting, like let's go to radius like 0.1, which is something I usually prefer. And it looks like more cloudy, but it's still quite readable, better than with the radius 0 0.3. And now let's go to the opposite. Let's go to radius equal to 1. Now the caching, let's say the pre-caching might be quite long. So let me stop, and I will get back once this will done. Once this will be done. Good. So the render is done, and as you can see with the settings we went for, the logo is completely unreadable. But now we can clearly see the density results, like with the radius equal to 1, the light can't go through certain areas, and that's why we have this black spots here. Now we can see clearly, or more clear, the scattering effect, and increasing the radius up to 1 drastically increased the render time, which is now more than 3 minutes. Good. The reason I went through all of those settings is just to highlight you the differences between them. So mm, now let's go to final settings I would like to propose. So let's go for a radius equal to 1.1. Let's move to the materials and change the scattering to 0.75. I want to have this more smooth, and let's see how it will looks like now. So let's render faster. It looks fine, and let's see how it will looks like mm, on the other frames. Like let's go to frame number like 75, and let's see how it will looks like here. And the more particles we have on a screen or on a scene, then the more time consuming. The render will take more time. And yeah, it looks interesting. Now let's go to frame number 170. Yeah, that's 170. And I don't like those particles. Let's press 7 to go to the top view. And yeah, those particles left our cube. So we can very easily fix that. Having cube selected, press tab. Oh yeah, before I will do that, let's see how it will looks like on the render. So let's go to the camera mode, and you can see on the camera view, you can see those particles clearly, but those particles will be cut off here. And let's see how it looks like. And it might take a couple of seconds, but no worries, we are almost done with this video, and let's see how it looks like. And yeah, we can clearly see, so you can see this is cut off here because those particles left our volume cube. On the other hand, now you can see those particles with this radius and stuff like that. So if we can we can even go for lower radius here to see the difference better. And yeah, let's do that before I will tweak the cube. So let's go back to the texture and let's change the radius from 0.1 to 0.05, and let's render it. That should be faster than before. And here we go. Those those particles are the spheres of those particles, or those particles are less spherical than they were before, and so on. So you can use you can even decrease that, or you can increase that, whatever you prefer, mm, whatever you will be happy for. But now you can see the difference is much more clear. And now let's try to fix. Let's go back to point 1 and let's try to fix the particles which were cut off. So having cube selected, press tab and then scale it a little bit to make sure that those particles will be inside the cube. Once done, press tab again and let's give it a final render. And yeah, it's important to scale the cube in the edit mode. If you would scale it, and maybe I can show you difference of scaling the cube not in the edit mode. As you can see, those particles which were cut off are now on the scene, and of course we see that we would need to move the camera a little bit on the left, but I won't do that. Let me now do one thing. Let's scale it in object mode. So let's scale it like this. And let's see the result. And that might take some time. Since the cube was already scaled up to bigger size, then this difference would not be as obvious as you would scale the default cube a couple of times bigger, but still you should see some difference. And let it, yeah, as you can see now the textures are not properly reflected. Even if we still would see our particles in a camera, they are not properly mapped to the cube. So, and of course the volume changed, so you can see the effect of the density here. That's more or less all what I wanted to show today. I think that's all. The only thing I would like to say at the end is that I would like to thank you for watching. I hope that you have learned something out of it and you liked it. And in case you liked it or in case you don't like it, just leave me a comment. I would like to hear from you. And yeah, thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.